So it was over on our video for my thought process on digestive symptoms that user ND9 asked a great question that made me realize I should do a video about the symptom of shortness of breath. So they asked, hey Tony, first of all, thank you for all these great videos. And well, you're welcome. You know, I really like it when someone takes time to say thank you when they learn something. I really appreciate that. They go on to say, I've been taking betaine HCl for a couple of weeks now with beet flow, zinc, and following your advice to kill off bad bacteria like celery juice, D-limonene, mastic gum. On top of reflux, my worst symptom is shortness of breath. All day I am struggling to breathe fully. Sometimes my head gets dizzy. I have a small hernia, which I also had back in 2018, so I suppose this is not an issue, as my digestive issues started this February after I had a mycoplasma infection and had to take 3 rounds of antibiotics. I had an endoscopy a week ago and the doctor said my hernia is the same as 2018. He didn't prescribe PPIs as I had no erosion in my esophagus, but advised me to take betaine HCl. Will the shortness of breath also go away once I get rid of the bad guys, you think? It feels like having a ball in my stomach not allowing to fully breathe in. So let's jump into this topic a little bit. Here we go.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So just remember, I'm not a doctor and I don't know ND9 here. I couldn't possibly know their situation, so I couldn't possibly be giving them any type of medical advice or anything. But we can go over some studies, and I'll put the links to those studies in the description below this video, and we can dig into some of these things that have the ability to seem to create this shortness of breath issue. Or dyspnea, as a lot of people will say it, and maybe that's half the problem. That's not such a great name. Maybe you should request a better name and maybe it'll be easier to figure out. But when you research this, you're going to find that there are some significant issues that have the ability to have this symptom show up pretty commonly, and that's like liver disease, kidney disease, chronic lung disease, smoking, asthma, and a partially collapsed lung, which is called a pneumothorax. And I have a video that I'll put in the description below about my experience having a spontaneous pneumothorax when I was a young whippersnapper, and I'll help you understand that if you think that might be an issue for you. But usually if somebody's got that, they really know it. That can really create some pain. A lot of times this symptom will just go along with the shortness of breath, and the person will go into their doctor and they'll have all these tests run, and they'll say, well, the good news is you look great, everything's fine, good day. And so now we're kind of stuck with, well, why is this happening? I don't understand. So I want to go over some more common things that seem to have the ability to create this issue. And since ND9 talked about a hiatal hernia, let's talk about that one first. And we'll look at this study here on when the stomach rules the heart, dyspnea and a neglected complication of a large hiatal hernia. And in this study, they went through some people that had the hiatal hernia, and they said that like 83% of the people had this type of shortness of breath symptom when they did any type of physical activity. And this is called exertional dyspnea. And in this study, they said that 83% of the people had this symptom where they had this shortness of breath when they did any type of physical activity. And physical activity is going to magnify most of the problems that have the ability to create this shortness of breath. And a lot of people have the shortness of breath when they're not having any physical activity at all. So I just view the physical activity versions as just a magnified, stimulus kind of. So where it's going to create the problem for a wider variety of people. But in this study, most of the people who were dealing with this symptom saw improvement when they had some type of surgery to correct the hiatal hernia. So let's look at this hiatal hernia situation. I'm not going to dig too deep into this or a lot of these other topics, but I will put links in the description below to videos that I've done where I dig deep into the hiatal hernia. But a hiatal hernia is just when your stomach here gets pulled up through the diaphragm and then it kind of jacks up some things. And now everything's not going to work so great. And now we have this pressure pushing on the diaphragm, and the diaphragm needs to be able to move up and down for us to be able to breathe fully and correctly. So when something is putting pressure on this diaphragm, it has the ability to restrict our ability to really breathe in deeply, and it kind of gives us what we feel as a shortness of breath. And there's a lot of people that talk about when this pressure is strong enough, pushing up on the diaphragm, it also has the ability to push up on our heart muscle and can create symptoms like heart palpitations. That's certainly not the only cause of that. I'm not going to dig into that a whole lot, but it's important to understand that when you're pushing up or anything that's pushing up on these systems, it has the ability to create some symptoms. So let's look at this here when we're talking about other issues. It's not just a hiatal hernia that can create this symptom. Any stomach problems have the ability to create this pressure that can push things up and restrict the diaphragm from working correctly. And the biggest problem that seems to create this for most people is some type of bacterial overgrowth. We shouldn't really have a lot of bacteria here in the stomach. It should be more in the large intestine. And when we have a lot of bacteria in the stomach where they really shouldn't be, they have these waste byproducts that they put out, which can create a lot more gases, and those gases can create a lot more pressure. And that pressure can either cause us to feel bloated or maybe, cause some acid reflux things by pushing things back up. But all of these things have the ability to push up on this stomach into the diaphragm. And in that hiatal hernia video that I did, I talk about that's a possible cause for hiatal hernias is just the pressure from some overgrowth here. And this overgrowth can either happen in the stomach or the small intestine. It could be a SIBO issue or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that pressure can push things back up for some folks as well. But even if it didn't cause a hiatal hernia, that pressure could still be putting pressure up on that diaphragm, restricting the diaphragm's motility. And what's interesting about this is that in most cases, hypochlorhydria, or a lack of stomach acid, is going to be what allows some type of overgrowth to come in and set up camp. When we eat food, we're supposed to make this hydrochloric acid in our stomach that is there not just to help us acidify our food so we can break it down and get the nutrients out of that food. It's supposed to be the barrier to the whole digestive tract. So these varmints that come in on the food that we're eating should die in an acid bath from this HCl that our stomach creates. The problem is, for a wide variety of reasons, a lot of people do not have the ability to make enough HCl to kill those things off. And one thing that's interesting about ND9 there is that they were saying that they were having reflux symptoms too. And we know that reflux really usually comes from a lack of stomach acid. It's not really from too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe. There's a valve at the bottom of the esophagus called an LES, lower esophageal sphincter, that is triggered by stomach acid. And when the stomach acid is there enough, it'll trigger that valve to close so things don't come back up. But if someone just has a small amount of acid, but it's not enough to trigger that LES valve to close, now the small amount is going to come back up and burn us. So this is just another factor in why you see this a lot with, people see this, shortness of breath with reflux as well. And this is because these things are often all associated. There's either a lack of stomach acid that's creating that reflux, or some type of bacterial overgrowth that got in because of the lack of stomach acid, and all that gases and stuff is creating the pressure that's pushing things back up. But also, even if there's not an overgrowth, when we don't have enough stomach acid, now the food has to break down by process of rotting or fermenting. And those processes take a lot longer, leaving the food in the stomach a lot longer, which can also create other gases that can create pressure and push things back up that way. So this hernia can be a really big deal for a lot of people that are dealing with shortness of breath. Even for someone that says, I have the hernia is the same size, so that's probably not it, I didn't have this before. But if there's an overgrowth that came in, then that can really be, that would magnify anything that would come about from an overgrowth, because now you have more pressure pushing up on that hernia. And if somebody is using antibiotics, those have the ability to wipe out bacteria, but they don't kill off yeast, mold, and fungal issues. And once the bacteria is wiped out, those bacteria usually keep the fungal issues in check. So when you kill off all the bacteria, good and bad, in the digestive tract with antibiotics, now the yeast, mold, fungal guys are like, hey, let's have a party. We'll take over now. And a lot of times that can be the problem. The overgrowth is not always bacteria in the digestive tract. Other kind of varmints can create trouble as well. And this study here on H. pylori and patients suffering from pulmonary disease, they talk a little bit about how a lot of the patients were also dealing with this shortness of breath type symptoms. Now, let's dig a little bit into this study on the acidosis and dyspnea, because this, either an acidosis or an alkalosis issue, has the ability to create some symptoms in breathing type symptoms. And what we want to understand is that the pH of the blood is very important to the body. If the pH goes a little bit too far on the alkaline side or the acid side, it can create a lot of trouble. So the body has a lot of backup mechanisms that it uses to keep that pH and that body chemistry in the blood in check. And one of those mechanisms is the body will adjust the rate at which it breathes in an effort to help balance out that pH. CO2 is something that we expel when we breathe out. CO2 comes out. CO2 is acidic. So if the blood is leaning too far on that alkaline side, the body will slow the rate at which it's breathing in an effort to hold on to more CO2, acidify that blood, and now when the blood is more acidified, it can balance out that pH. And when that blood is leaning too far on the alkaline side, it can restrict oxygen utilization issues through the Bohr effect. And so the body really wants to keep this balanced out. And if the blood is leaning too far on the acidic side, the body will speed up the rate at which it's breathing in an effort to huff off more of this CO2 and balance out the pH. So a lot of those studies were talking about that they saw that the levels of CO2 were higher in these people that were having the shortness of breath symptoms, and when they alkalized that bloodstream, they found that those symptoms improved. And so we need to understand that this breath rate that the body is doing is really trying to tell us that things are going wrong. Now, the answer is not to do some breathing exercise and change the way that your body is breathing. It's to fix the underlying cause that's causing the body to try to adjust things. So you can look at this pretty easily at home, and this is not a diagnostic thing, but it can give you an idea if this is a really big problem or not, is you can just set the timer on your phone for a minute and just relax, try to breathe normal, and just count the number of inhales that you take in that 60 seconds. Not inhale 1, exhale 2, just count the inhales. So if you have less than 12 inhales in that 60 seconds, that can be a sign that the blood is leaning too far on that alkaline side. And if you have more than 18 inhales in that 60-second period, that can be a sign that the blood is leaning a little bit too far on that acidic side. I'm not going to go too far into steps to balance that out, but we'll put a link in the description below for our totally free digestion course. And that course will not only walk you through figuring out are there aspects of digestion that are not working correctly, like low stomach acid and such, or do I have a bacterial overgrowth, but it'll show you some simple tests that you can run at home using tools you can pick up like at a pharmacy or a health food store to get an idea of, is my blood right in the right pH range, and steps I can take to kind of balance that out if it's leaning too far in that direction. So I'll put the link to that totally free course below so you can see you might have some more homework that you need to dig into a little bit to figure out what's creating this for you. Lactic acidosis also has the ability to create this symptom, and this could come about from someone over-exercising where they're creating too much lactic acid. But there's also something we call an anabolic imbalance at the cellular level, where the body's circadian rhythm is kind of stuck in that nighttime state most of the time, where they're not moving back and forth from nighttime to daytime like the body should. They're kind of stuck in this nighttime state. And when that's the case, the body will create more energy through fermentation, and a byproduct of that can be lactic acid. So a lot of people that have high lactic acid issues are just stuck in this anabolic imbalance. And that free course kind of walks you through figuring out if you're leaning too far on that side as well, so that can help you out. You'll also hear a lot about anxiety, anemia, and gallbladder problems all being related to this shortness of breath issue. And interestingly enough, one of the causes that we see, underlying causes for anxiety, is this overly anabolic state, because high levels of lactic acid have the ability to create anxiety. There's other causes for anxiety. If you're dealing with that, we'll have links in the description below for videos that walk you through that. But interestingly enough, anemia can be a problem because that's kind of like this oxygen delivery system. We kind of need that, everything going on with that iron in the red blood cells and everything, so that we can carry oxygen to the body. And usually anemia has the ability to be caused by an inability to break down proteins correctly. It's hard to access that iron if you can't break down proteins and access all the nutrients in those foods. So it's interesting that we're seeing a lot of things that we see, connected to this shortness of breath symptom, and a lot of them have the ability to lead back to these digestive malfunctions. So if you're having shortness of breath and any type of digestive symptoms at all, then looking into understanding those digestive malfunctions and correcting them could really be a big chance of improving this symptom as well. And that free digestion course will help you understand that. And what's interesting is it's really common to see this shortness of breath with pregnancy. And so people say, oh, well, you're pregnant. Of course you have shortness of breath. But when you think about it, that pregnancy has the ability to create a lot of these problems in other ways. This extra person, pushing things up on the diaphragm, just like all those other things could do. A lot of these resources that would be used for other things going towards building this other human can magnify some of these other things that we talked about. The hormones that come available have the ability to create gallbladder trouble. So it's interesting to see that these symptoms can come up with pregnancy, and it kind of makes sense when you understand these other possible causes. Keep in mind that excess weight also has the ability to push pressure up on the diaphragm. So if a person needs to lose weight, that could be another step. So when you're looking at, what are the steps that I take? What do I do? Well, come on, give me something I can take. Well, I can't give you something you can just go to a health food store and take and have this fixed by Thursday, because you can see that there's a wide variety of issues that can cause this. And that's going to be different from person to person. So you're really going to have to do the work to look at your body chemistry, understand the things that are really jumping out, like, oh wow, yeah, that's obviously a really big problem. Why don't I put some effort into correcting that and see if this symptom improves or not? But since this low stomach acid seems to have the ability to kind of create the cascade that can kind of create a lot of these issues, you can jump over right now and check out our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid to see if that might be a problem you need to work on. I can't wait to hear about your results.